Hi, Kimberly here, talking to you, to guests, or sometimes to myself. Join me for spontaneous conversations, Bible studies, or a little creative expression. It's a biblical buffet. Hope you enjoy this episode of HolySmorgasBlog.
You are a creator. You can create. You should be creating. Everyone should be creating consistently, as a habit, almost all the time. Even if you are working in a job or doing things that you don't think are associated with creativity, you should be creating. If you haven't created in a while, you should be creating. If you've never created, you should be creating. If you are creating, you should be creating more. You are made to create. And when we aren't creating, when we aren't being creative, there is often a subconscious frustration in us. There is a constipation, this creative constipation. And when we're not able to have that creative outlet, we get there, this frustration can build. And sometimes we can't pinpoint why we're frustrated, what this frustration is from, where the root of this frustration is. And part of it is because we were all made to create. So one of my suggestions for any of you who either don't create at all, or don't think you create at all, or don't think you're creative, or don't have time to create, is put in 5 minutes, put in 60 seconds while you're in the restroom. Start to stir up those creative juices. If it's in the car, if it's once a weekend, if it's once a month. If you're in a season like I have been where I didn't have that outlet, but I knew for my health, for my spiritual and natural health, I needed to have that outlet. What I did is started to squeeze things in. It was almost challenging to get that momentum started. But what I started to do was, one, I started to carry a recorder around with me, and then my phone. And I have a notebook on the side of my bed, and it's just ideas. And they don't have to be good. They don't have to make sense. They don't have to be long. It could be a thought. It could be a quote. It could be a poem. It could be an idea for an invention, for architecture. Doesn't matter. Write down ideas, because there's just something that stirs you up more when you're writing it, because you're not only writing it, it's almost like you're saying it and you're seeing it. And that seems to stir you up more. That seems to solidify it more. And that seems to almost give you more of an accountability to keep going. What happens is when you start doing that, it starts to gain momentum. It starts to stir up your juices. It starts to, again, solidify your ideas. They start to grow. And if you have ideas, if you are a creative and you have all kinds of ideas and they're all laid out, but they're not executed, my suggestion to you is to start with the smaller ones. To, again, get your momentum going, to get your confidence going, to encourage yourself. Start with something that's tangible, that you could fulfill, that you could execute with what you have in your hands now, with your abilities now, with your resources now. Start there. Get her done. You have inherently been given gifts by God, abilities by God. And it's our responsibility to exercise those gifts and abilities. So if you're in a situation you were like, I'm creative. Yes, I know I'm creative. Or yes, I want to be creative, but what good is that? Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Or I didn't go to school. I wasn't trained. Doesn't matter. Just do. Just create. Creative people create. It doesn't matter who sees it. It doesn't matter if no one ever sees it. If you're already a creator and you're already executing, there are two things that I suggest to you. One is grow your projects. Make sure they're bigger. They get bigger every time to stretch you. Two is you should be including people. You should be duplicating yourself, mentoring, discipling, showing, teaching other people. That's a huge part of God's heart. It's for us to be duplicating ourselves, to be empowering other people, to be depositing into other people who also have these giftings or giftings associated with our skill sets. And your creativity doesn't have to be your job. It doesn't have to be your work. It doesn't even have to be your income. It could possibly be a hobby and be a hobby for the rest of your life. But if you're continually and consistently exercising it, then there's no doubt that your creativity will become more skillful. And some of us, we're given one gifting. Some of us were given 20 giftings. Whether it's 1, 20, or anything in between, we are responsible and accountable to exercise those giftings. And what comes naturally to us, we're not always recognizing. Something may be so common to you, so innate, that you don't even know that it's a skill. You don't think it's an ability or a gifting. You don't know. And someone else may look at that and think it's extraordinary. We often take our own giftings for granted because we were born with them. And some of them have been stifled depending on your upbringing or your circumstances and surroundings. They may be dormant, they may be invisible, but they're there. And we're responsible to exercise them. And we're responsible to gain knowledge regarding our giftings. Now, there have been times where God has actually supernaturally given people knowledge. And there have been times when God has supernaturally given people skill. When he has done that, he's done that because there's a certain people that he needs to affect by a certain time and in a certain way for a certain purpose. What we need to do is pray that God will reveal to us how we're supposed to, what we have in us and how we're supposed to apply those things. Whether we have exercised our spiritual ears and are able to hear him yet or not, we're still accountable. And even if you think they never are skillful or never would be skillful, we're still responsible. We're still accountable to apply and utilize them. Here are some of the scriptures that may encourage you, and I'm going to take these scriptures and speak them directly to your heart. Here's Ephesians 2:10 from the Amplified Version. You are God's workmanship, his own masterwork. You personally are a work of art. You are created in and by and with Christ Jesus. So allow him to use you for good works, works that he prepared for you beforehand, to walk the paths that he already prepared and prearranged and made ready for you to walk. Then there is Exodus 35:35. God has filled you with skill to do all kinds of good work. All kinds of work, He's filled you with certain things and certain abilities and certain ways and certain characteristics and certain personality traits and certain ways of working and certain applications. He has individually and uniquely gifted you with these things. And you need not die with those things. You have to pour them out while you're on this planet. It's our responsibility to pour these things out of ourselves. Some of what you pour out may seem like junk, may seem like it doesn't matter. Some of you are looking for men's approval, people's approval, or recognition. That shouldn't matter. You are accountable to God, and you're accountable to yourself. And then you're accountable to your inner circle. And then you're accountable to the next level of people. You're accountable to get out whatever you put in whatever he's put in you. And if you think it's junk, get it out anyway until it's not. That's the thing about creating is often there it's a layer. And sometimes that top layer just needs to be sifted away until the gold comes up. This is Romans 12:6-8. I'm speaking right to you. You have gifts that differ from other people. The gifts that are unique to you. How do you have these gifts? It's according to the grace given to you. You need to use them accordingly, appropriately. You need to be applying them. It goes on to list different ways. Service, serving, teaching, whatever it is. By the grace of God, you need to be applying them accordingly. Whatever you do, whether it's encouragement, whether it's giving, whether it's leading, whatever it is, you're supposed to do it with diligence. Those things aren't just for you. If you aren't sharing, if you aren't getting it out, if you're not giving what's inside of you, not only is it selfish, but you're holding back something that's beneficial to someone else. If we are not sharing what's inside of us, then that means there is a person or persons longing for what's inside of you and not getting it. And then there's a hole in their life. There's a spiritual and natural hole, and they can't pinpoint it. And it's because they're waiting for you to be obedient. They're waiting for you to answer your calling. They're waiting for you to not make any excuses about executing. Whatever roadblock or wall or thing that may be holding you back, selfishness it could be, whatever ignorance, the thing is just do. And God meets your do. When you start doing, it's a form of faithfulness. It's just a form of stepping out on the water, and he meets that. He's not going to make you ride a bike. He's going to say pedal. And then he's going to give you direction. So you have to start pedaling. You have to create. And then he is going to give you direction, and he's going to bring resources, and he'll bring the people who need what you have inside of you. So I was mentioning how we're responsible to take our gifts, our talents, and our abilities and exercise them and give them muscles. And there are times, and it's happened with me, where while you're gaining knowledge or while you're developing the skill, God needs something to be done. And he'll just drop supernaturally the knowledge, nothing you learned on your own, the knowledge in you. And he'll drop supernaturally in you the skill, nothing you exercised on your own. All of a sudden you have this supernatural and natural ability to apply and to share and to do and to wield the giftings that he's put in you. An example is in Exodus 35:30. This is a Moses Israelite situation, but he filled someone with his spirit, okay? And in other words, he gave him supernatural more than he had ability. He filled him with wisdom, and he filled him with skill, and he filled him with intelligence, and he filled him with understanding. He filled him with knowledge in all areas of craftsmanship. He did it because he had a purpose. He did it to devise artistic design. So he could do work in gold and silver and bronze and stones with carving wood, so that he would work in every skilled craft. Listen to this. He put in this man's heart the willingness to teach others the same skills. Both he and some other people, he gave that willingness to teach, to share, to disciple, to mentor. He filled them with the skill to do the work of, and all this list of all these things that he gave them the ability to do. So you can pray for that. I prayed for that. There have been areas where I didn't know, I couldn't go to school for it, or I couldn't pay for it, or I didn't have the time for it. And I just was like, Lord, if you want me to do this and you trust me with this skill, I just asked for it, and he's done it. He's given me that supernaturally. Sometimes it stayed and sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it was for a season and sometimes it was for longer. But the thing is, it has to be for his purposes. It has to be for good reason. And when we have a pure heart about things, and we're doing them for others' benefit, we're doing them for God's glory, we're doing things not for selfish reasons, he tends to give us a grace for it. And he tends to almost redeem time, condense time for us, and almost condense the time it takes to learn and to apply and to share those abilities, and depending on what his purposes are. Again, here's the point. Creative people create. If you're in a situation where you're not creating, or you don't think you're creative, you are. Trust me, you are. It may not even be a typical kind of creativity. There have been situations where I've been in where I've just overseen creativity or overseen creative people. And that was enough of an outlet for me at the time. Everything is seasonal. Know what your season is too. Know that, well, now is the time for me to just read about creativity, or just be writing in my creative journal. It could be just as basic as that for now. It will grow if you're exercising that in you. You could step out on a limb and start partnering up with creative people. It's catchy. Creativity is catchy. It's tangible, and you can actually receive that from other people. And it starts opening up your creative receptors almost. So if you have to step out on a limb and be a part of a group, or get into producing, or investing in others who are creative, hanging out in creative situations, if you have to take a class, if you want to take a class, if you could take a class, do that. Whatever you have to do to open up those valves that may not be open, do that. So as far as roadblocks and writing blocks and walls, there really are none. There's just seasons and there's timing, but there's no end to creativity. There's always more. We're talking about an omnipotent, omniscient God, creator, an omnipotent creator. There's never ending creativity, and you have access to that. You are born from the creator. You are a creator. You are creative. Creative people create.
Thanks for joining me for another Holy Smorgasblog. Guests' contributions aren't necessarily the same as or representative of the host, program, or affiliate. The studies and views here aren't necessarily an exhaustive knowledge of scripture or life. Please confirm for yourself by studying the word in context. It's recommended to do so slower than this disclaimer.